The night was quiet in the northern woods. Too quiet. Mark Taylor stood on his cabin porch, coffee in hand, looking up at the stars. After 5 years as a forest ranger in this remote area, he knew when something felt wrong. Strange, he muttered to himself, taking a sip from his mug. The animals had gone silent about an hour ago. No owls hooting, no wolves howling in the distance. Nothing. Mark set down his coffee and grabbed his flashlight and jacket. Whatever was happening, he needed to check it out. That was his job after all. Protect the forest and everything in it. The air felt different as he walked along the familiar path. His boots crunched on fallen leaves, the sound too loud in the unusual silence. Then he saw it, a faint blue glow between the trees, about half a mile from his cabin. What the? Mark quickened his pace, his hand moving to the radio on his belt. But who would he even call? The nearest ranger station was 30 miles away. The blue light grew stronger as he approached. It wasn't a campfire. The color was wrong, and it didn't flicker like flames. This light pulsed, almost like it was breathing. Mark pushed through a thick cluster of bushes and froze. In a small clearing stood what could only be a spacecraft. It was small, maybe the size of 2 cars put together, with smooth metal that shimmered despite the damage on one side. Strange symbols covered its hull. Definitely not any language Mark had ever seen. "Hello," he called out, knowing how stupid it sounded. "Anyone there?" No response came from the ship, but the light pulsed faster, as if reacting to his voice. Mark approached slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. A section of the ship's side was open, not like a door, but more like it had been torn apart in a crash. Mark shined his flashlight inside. The beam revealed a small cockpit with 2 seats. One was empty. In the other, "Oh my God," he whispered. A girl, or at least something shaped like a girl, lay slumped in the pilot's seat. Her skin was blue, not the dark blue of the night sky, but bright and slightly shimmering, like the surface of a calm lake on a sunny day. Her face looked almost human, with a nose and mouth, but her closed eyes seemed larger, and her ears came to slight points. Silver liquid, blood, leaked from a wound on her side. Mark hesitated only for a second before climbing inside. Up close, he could see she was breathing, but barely. The silver blood soaked her strange clothing, which looked like a one-piece suit made of material that shifted colors slightly as he moved his flashlight. "Hey," Mark said softly, touching her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that were entirely purple with no visible pupils. Those eyes widened in fear when they saw Mark. She tried to move away but winced in pain, more silver blood seeping from her wound. "It's okay," Mark said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien girl spoke, her voice musical, but the words completely foreign. Mark pointed to her wound, then to himself. "I can help," he said slowly. She seemed to understand his meaning, if not his words. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded slightly. Very carefully, Mark lifted her from the seat. She was lighter than he expected, maybe 80 pounds at most. Her body felt cool against his arms. "I'm taking you to my cabin," he explained, though he knew she couldn't understand. "I can treat you there." Looking around quickly, Mark grabbed a small device from beside her seat. It looked important, and tucked it into his pocket. As he carried her away from the ship, the blue light began to fade. The alien girl looked back once, then up at Mark's face. In her strange purple eyes, he saw something universal, a mixture of fear and hope. Mark walked faster. He didn't know what had happened to her or why she was alone. But one thing was clear: if he didn't help her, no one would. Mark pushed open his cabin door with his shoulder. The alien girl still cradled in his arms. Her breathing had grown shallow during the walk back, and more silver blood had soaked through her strange suit. He gently placed her on his bed and rushed to get his first aid kit. Years of ranger training had prepared him for many emergencies, but nothing like this. "Hang on," he said, opening the kit. "I don't know if human medicine will work on you, but we have to try something." The alien girl's eyes suddenly flew open. She sat up with a jolt, then cried out in pain. Strange words poured from her mouth as she looked around wildly, her purple eyes wide with fear. "Easy, easy," Mark said, raising his hands. "You're safe here." She pressed herself against the wall, one hand clutching her wounded side. With the other, she pointed at Mark and spoke rapidly in her musical language. Mark shook his head. "I don't understand. I'm sorry." The alien girl paused, studying him. Then she slowly reached for a small device strapped to her wrist. It looked damaged, with cracks across its surface, but it lit up when she touched it. Mark watched as she tapped at the device. A small hologram appeared above it, showing strange symbols that shifted and changed. "Are you trying to translate?" Mark asked. The alien nodded. At least that gesture seemed universal. Mark pointed to himself. "Mark," he said clearly. The alien girl hesitated, then pointed to herself. "Lyria." Her voice was soft, musical. "Lyria," Mark repeated. "Nice to meet you, though I wish it was under better circumstances." Lyria tapped more on her device, then pointed to her wound. Mark nodded. "Yes, we need to fix that." He gestured to his first aid kit. "But I don't know if human medicine will help or hurt you." Lyria seemed to understand his concern. She raised her wrist device and scanned the contents of the first aid kit. The small hologram displayed more symbols, some flashing red, others green. She pointed to the clean bandages and water, green symbols. Then to the antiseptic and pain medicines, red symbols. "Got it," Mark said. "Water and bandages okay. The rest, no." Working slowly, Mark helped clean Lyria's wound with water. The cut was deep, about 4 inches long on her side. Up close, her skin had a faint pattern, almost like scales, but smooth to the touch. As he worked, Lyria continued tapping on her device. Finally, it produced a scratchy, computerized voice. "Ship attacked. Crew, thought I. Dead. Left me." Mark looked up in surprise. "Your translator is working." "Little damaged," the device said. "Learning your words." "Who attacked your ship?" Mark asked, carefully wrapping a bandage around Lyria's midsection. Lyria's face darkened. "Vex. Enemy of my people. They hunt us." Mark frowned. "Are they still looking for you?" Lyria nodded, her purple eyes filled with worry. "We'll find. Crashed ship. Soon. Then we need to be ready," Mark said. He finished securing the bandage and stood up. "You should rest. I'll keep watch." Lyria caught his hand. Her skin felt cool against his. The translator spoke again, the voice slightly clearer now. "Why help me? I am not your kind." Mark smiled gently. "Where I come from, we help those who need it. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from." For the first time, Lyria's expression softened. She said something in her language, musical and flowing. The translator spoke. "My people have word for this. Closest meaning. Soul kindness." Mark nodded. "Rest now. We'll figure out what to do next when you're stronger." As Lyria closed her eyes, Mark moved to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, he knew others might be coming, either to rescue Lyria or to finish what they started. He checked his rifle in the corner of the room. One way or another, he would be ready. Mark jolted awake in his chair by the window. Something had woken him. A sound. A light? He wasn't sure. The cabin was dark except for the dying embers in the fireplace. Lyria still slept on his bed, her blue skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Then he saw it. Through the window, far above the trees, strange lights moving in the night sky. Not stars. Not planes. These lights moved with purpose, scanning patterns over the forest. "Lyria," Mark whispered, gently shaking her shoulder. "Wake up." Her purple eyes opened instantly. When Mark pointed to the window, she sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in her side. "Vex ships," she said, her translator device now working better after hours of processing human language. "They have found my crashed ship." As if to confirm her words, a bright beam of light shot down from one of the ships, illuminating the forest in the direction where Mark had found Lyria's crashed vessel. "Will they come here?" Mark asked, already moving to gather supplies. Lyria nodded. "They have trackers. We'll follow my blood trail. Not long before they find us." Mark grabbed his backpack and began filling it with essentials: water, food, first aid supplies, matches, and his hunting knife. He checked his rifle and added a box of ammunition to the pack. "We need to move deeper into the forest," he said. "I know places where we can hide." Lyria stood shakily. The bandage on her side showed spots of silver, but less than before. "My kind heals fast," she explained, seeing Mark's concerned look. "I can travel." A mechanical whirring sound came from outside, growing louder. "Drones," Lyria whispered, fear in her voice. "They send these first to search." Mark peeked through the window. Small metallic objects, each about the size of a dinner plate, were floating between the trees. Their centers glowed red as they scanned the forest floor. "Out the back," Mark said. "Stay low and follow me." They slipped out the rear door of the cabin just as one of the drones appeared at the front. Mark led Lyria into the dense undergrowth, moving carefully to avoid leaving an obvious trail. "The stream is this way," he whispered. "If we walk in the water, they can't track us as easily." They reached the narrow stream, its water cold and fast-moving. Mark helped Lyria in, supporting her as they waded upstream. Behind them, a bright light suddenly illuminated the trees. Mark looked back to see his cabin being searched, beams of light cutting through the windows. "They know you're not alone now," Lyria said quietly. "They will hunt you too." Mark's jaw tightened. "Let them try. This is my forest. I know it better than anyone." They continued upstream for nearly an hour before Mark guided them out onto a rocky bank that wouldn't show footprints. The night had grown colder, and Lyria shivered despite her insistence that she was fine. "There's an old hunter's shelter ahead," Mark told her. "We can rest there until morning." The shelter was little more than a lean-to made of logs and branches, hidden in a dense thicket of pines. It was dry inside, with old leaves covering the ground. As they settled in, Lyria's translator device projected a small hologram, a map of the surrounding area, with pulsing red dots moving through the forest. "Vex search parties," she explained. "They are spreading out from your cabin." Mark studied the map. "They're moving in a standard search pattern, but they don't know these woods." He pointed to an area on the map. "There's a system of caves here. We can reach them by midday tomorrow, if we're careful." Lyria looked at him, her purple eyes reflecting the light of the hologram. "Why do you risk your life for me? The Vex will not show mercy if they find you helping me." Mark was quiet for a moment. "Back there, you said your people have a word. Soul kindness. My parents taught me that helping others isn't a choice, it's a duty, even when it's dangerous." Lyria reached out and touched his hand, her cool fingers gentle against his skin. "My people were right about humans. You are different from other species we have met." A drone whirred in the distance, reminding them of the danger. "Rest," Mark said. "I'll take first watch." Dawn broke with fingers of light stretching through the pine branches. Mark had let Lyria sleep through the night, keeping watch himself despite his burning eyes. The Vex drones had passed nearby twice, but the thick canopy of trees had hidden the shelter. "You did not wake me for my turn to watch," Lyria said, sitting up. Her voice sounded clearer through the translator, which had continued learning English overnight. "You needed the rest more than me," Mark replied, checking outside. "How's your wound?" Lyria pulled aside the bandage. The cut had already formed a thin silver scar. "Almost healed. My people recover quickly." Mark nodded, impressed. "We should eat something before moving toward the caves." They shared the dried meat and energy bars from Mark's pack. As they ate, Lyria studied him curiously. "Your world is very green," she said. "My home has less plants, more water. Oceans cover most of our planet." "What's it called?" "Your world," Mark asked. "In your language, the closest sound would be Lumura. My people are the Lumari." "And the Vex? Why do they hunt you?" Lyria's expression darkened. "They are conquerors. They take worlds for resources. My people can connect with living systems, plants, water cycles, even weather patterns. The Vex see this as a threat to their expansion." To demonstrate, Lyria placed her hand on the ground. The dried leaves around her fingers suddenly sprouted tiny green shoots that grew visibly, curling around her blue fingers. "That's amazing," Mark whispered, watching the plants respond to her touch. "All Lumari can do this," she explained. "We were studying Earth because your planet has such diverse ecosystems. We meant no harm." "I believe you," Mark said. "And I think Earth could use more friends who care about living things." Lyria's translator was silent for a moment. Then she spoke in her own musical language. The device translated. "You are not what I expected. Our studies showed humans often fear what is different." Mark sighed. "Some do. Maybe most. I learned to be different after my wife died 5 years ago. She was a biologist, studying forest ecosystems. I was a city person, working in an office. After she was gone, I took this ranger job to feel close to what she loved." He looked away, surprised at himself for sharing so much. "Loss changes us," Lyria said softly. "It can open us to new understanding." A distant humming interrupted them. More drones. "Time to move," Mark said, packing up quickly. "The caves are about 3 miles north. If we're careful, we can reach them without being spotted." They moved through the forest, Mark leading the way through the densest parts where drones would have trouble scanning. When they had to cross open areas, they waited for the right moment, then moved quickly. At one point, they hid in a hollow log as a Vex drone passed directly overhead. Mark felt Lyria trembling beside him, her cool skin pressed against his in the tight space. "Almost there," he whispered when the drone moved on. By midday, they'd reached the rocky hillside where the cave entrance was hidden behind a waterfall. They slipped behind the curtain of water into the cool darkness beyond. Inside, the cave opened into a larger chamber with a high ceiling. Lyria's skin gave off a soft glow that illuminated the space around them. "We should be safe here for a while," Mark said, setting down his pack. "The water masks are heat signatures, and these rocks block any tracking signals." Lyria walked deeper into the cave, placing her hand on the damp wall. To Mark's amazement, small patches of glowing moss began to spread from her touch, providing gentle light throughout the cave. "Better," she said with a small smile. Mark stared at the beautiful, living light. "How do you do that?" "Life responds to life," Lyria explained. "I just ask it to grow." The energy was already here, waiting. She sat beside him, her purple eyes serious. "Mark, I need to contact my people. There is a way, but we must reach higher ground. The mountain peak above these caves would work." "That's dangerous territory," Mark warned. "The Vex will be watching open areas even more closely now." "It is the only way," Lyria said. "My people must be warned about the Vex presence here." And she hesitated. "It is the only way for me to leave your world without bringing more danger to you." Mark found himself strangely sad at the thought of Lyria leaving. In just 2 days, this alien girl had changed how he saw everything. "We'll start for the peak tomorrow," he decided. "But tonight, we rest and plan." They left the cave before sunrise. The mountain peak loomed above them, its top still dark against the lightening sky. Mark led the way, picking a path through rocks and trees that would keep them hidden as long as possible. "Once we get above the tree line, we'll be exposed," Mark warned, handing Lyria a walking stick he had cut. "We'll need to move quickly." Lyria nodded, her purple eyes scanning the sky. "No ships yet, but they will come." The first part of the climb was easy. through pine forests that Mark knew well. By mid-morning, they reached a steep section where the trees began to thin. Mark checked his small binoculars, searching for any sign of the Vex. "I see something," he said, pointing east. "Looks like they've set up some kind of checkpoint in the valley." Lyria used her wrist device to scan the area. 5 Vex soldiers. They have tracking equipment. "We'll go west then," Mark decided. "It's steeper, but they won't expect us to take the hard path." The western route was indeed difficult. They climbed over loose rocks and narrow ledges, using Mark's rope when necessary. By noon, dark clouds had gathered, and a cold wind whipped around them. "Storm coming," Mark said, looking up with concern. "We need to move faster." They pushed on, climbing higher. Lyria moved with surprising grace despite her recent injury. When they reached a particularly difficult section, she placed her hands on the rock face, and small cracks appeared, creating perfect handholds. "Useful trick," Mark said with a smile. "Stone is alive too, in its way," Lyria replied, "just very slow." The first drops of rain began to fall as they reached a small plateau. The mountain peak was still above them, maybe an hour's climb away. Thunder rolled across the sky. "We should find shelter until the storm passes," Mark suggested. Lyria shook her head. "No time. My device shows Vex patrols converging. They know where we are going." As if confirming her words, a mechanical whine cut through the air. A drone appeared from below, its red scanner sweeping the plateau. Down. Mark pulled Lyria behind a large boulder just as the drone fired a pulse of energy that scorched the ground where they had been standing. The drone circled, searching for them. Mark raised his rifle, took careful aim, and fired. The shot hit the drone's center, sending it spinning away in a shower of sparks. "They will know our location now," Lyria said, her voice tight with worry. "Then we run." Mark grabbed her hand, and they sprinted toward the next section of the climb. The rain fell harder, making the rocks slippery. They were 3/4 of the way to the peak when Mark spotted movement below. 3 Vex soldiers climbing rapidly after them. Unlike the drone, these were clearly living beings, though their bodies were covered in armor that made them look mechanical. "They're fast," Mark said, pulling Lyria up a steep section. "Vex evolution favored climbing," she explained between breaths. "Their home world is mountainous." They reached a narrow pass between 2 rock walls. Mark looked back. The Vex were gaining quickly. "Go," he told Lyria. "Get to the peak. I'll slow them down." "No." Lyria grabbed his arm. "They will kill you." "I won't fight them," Mark promised. "Just delay them. This pass is perfect for that." After a moment of hesitation, Lyria nodded. She touched his face gently, her cool fingers leaving a strange tingling sensation. "Be careful. I will prepare the signal." As Lyria continued toward the peak, Mark pushed several large rocks to the edge of the pass. The Vex were only 100 yards below now. He could see their armor gleaming in the rain, their movements quick and precise. Mark waited until the first Vex entered the narrow pass, then pushed the largest rock over the edge. It crashed down, forcing the Vex to scramble backward. More rocks followed, blocking the path. A beam of energy shot past Mark's head, burning the rock beside him. The Vex were firing up at him. He ducked down and moved along the edge, drawing their fire away from Lyria's position. Another beam hit closer, sending sharp stone fragments into Mark's arm. He winced at the pain but kept moving, leading the Vex around the side of the mountain, away from the peak where Lyria was now working to send her signal. Lyria reached the mountain peak as lightning flashed across the dark sky. Rain poured down, soaking her blue skin and making her shiver. Below, she could hear the sounds of energy weapons as the Vex fired at Mark. "Please be safe," she whispered, before turning to her task. From a hidden pocket in her suit, Lyria pulled out several small devices, parts she had taken from her crashed ship before Mark found her. She placed them on a flat rock and began connecting them with thin silver wires. Her fingers moved quickly despite the rain and cold. This was her people's technology, designed to reach across vast distances of space. If she could make it work, her people would come. They would save her and Mark. Another flash of lightning, another distant sound of weapons fire. Lyria worked faster. Meanwhile, Mark was running out of options. He had led the Vex soldiers around the side of the mountain, but now he was trapped on a narrow ledge. Two of the aliens had circled around, cutting off his escape route. Their armor protected them from his rifle shots, and they were closing in. Mark looked up at the peak where Lyria was working. He had to give her more time. Taking a deep breath, he jumped across a gap to another ledge. A Vex energy beam missed him by inches. The ledge led to a small cave opening, and Mark squeezed inside, buying himself a moment to think. The cave was shallow, barely big enough for him to sit. Outside, he could hear the Vex approaching. Mark checked his rifle. Only 3 bullets left. On the peak, Lyria connected the final wire. Her makeshift device hummed to life, a small light blinking at its center. She pointed it toward the sky and pressed a sequence of buttons on her wrist device. A beam of blue light shot upward from the device, cutting through the storm clouds. It pulsed in a complex pattern. A message, a call for help, a warning about the Vex. "Work," Lyria pleaded. "Please work." The signal continued for several seconds, then suddenly stopped. Lyria hit the device, trying to restart it, but nothing happened. The power source was drained. "No," she cried, her voice lost in the storm. Had the signal been strong enough? Had it lasted long enough for her people to detect it? She couldn't be sure. A noise behind her made Lyria turn. A Vex soldier had reached the peak, its armored form silhouetted against the stormy sky. The alien raised its weapon, aiming directly at her. Lyria closed her eyes, preparing for the end. A rifled shot rang out. The Vex soldier staggered, its armor cracked where the bullet had hit a weak point. Mark appeared from the rocks, his face bleeding from a cut, his clothes torn. "Move," he shouted to Lyria. The Vex recovered quickly and fired. Mark pushed Lyria aside, taking the blast on his shoulder. He cried out in pain and fell to his knees. "Mark!" Lyria rushed to him as he collapsed. The Vex soldier advanced, raising its weapon again. Lyria stood in front of Mark, her hands spread wide. She had one last trick, one ability she hadn't shown him yet. As the Vex fired, Lyria's body glowed with an intense blue light. The energy beam hit what looked like a shield of light around her and Mark. The force pushed Lyria back, but the shield held. 2 more Vex soldiers appeared, joining the first. They fired together, their combined beams pushing against Lyria's shield. She fell to one knee, straining to maintain the protection. "Can't hold much longer," she gasped. Mark tried to stand but couldn't. The wound on his shoulder was serious, burning from the energy weapon. "Your signal?" he asked through gritted teeth. "Did it work?" "I don't know," Lyria admitted, her voice strained. "Maybe." The Vex advanced step by step, their weapons never stopping. Lyria's shield grew smaller, weaker. Her body trembled with the effort. Suddenly, the stormy sky above them lit up with a new light. Not lightning, but something brighter, steadier. The Vex soldiers looked up, their weapons lowering slightly. A massive ship broke through the clouds, its hull gleaming despite the rain. Smaller ships detached from it, descending rapidly toward the mountain. "Lumari vessels," Lyria whispered, her voice filled with relief. "They received my signal." The Vex soldiers began firing upward at the approaching ships, but they were too late. Beams of light shot down from the Lumari vessels, surrounding the Vex in glowing energy that froze them in place. Lyria's shield finally failed, and she collapsed beside Mark. "Help is here," she told him, taking his hand. "We made it." The world faded in and out for Mark. He remembered being lifted by gentle hands, surrounded by figures with blue skin like Lyria's. There was pain, Then a cool sensation spreading through his body from his injured shoulder. Then darkness. When he woke, he was lying on a bed unlike anything he'd ever seen. It seemed to float slightly above the floor, and it adjusted perfectly to his body. The room around him was curved and smooth, with walls that glowed with soft light. "You are awake," said a familiar voice. Mark turned his head to see Lyria standing by his bed. She looked different, her torn clothes replaced by a flowing silver garment, her blue skin now healthy and vibrant. Her purple eyes watched him with relief. "Where are we?" Mark asked, trying to sit up. To his surprise, his shoulder didn't hurt anymore. "On my people's ship," Lyria explained. "They healed your wound. It was severe. The Vex weapon would have killed most humans." Mark touched his shoulder. There wasn't even a scar. "Amazing technology." "It is not just technology," Lyria said, sitting beside him. "My people can channel life energy to heal, like how I made plants grow, but more focused." Mark looked out a curved window nearby. He could see Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. The sight took his breath away. "We're in space," he whispered. Lyria nodded. "The Vex retreated when our main ship arrived. They are gone from your world now." "Good," Mark said, still staring at Earth. He had never imagined seeing his planet from this perspective. "What happens now?" Before Lyria could answer, a door opened. 3 tall Lumari entered the room. They looked similar to Lyria, but older, with patterns on their blue skin that seemed to indicate rank or status. One of them spoke in the musical Lumari language. Lyria's wrist device translated for Mark. "Human Mark Taylor, I am Elder Terem. You have our deepest gratitude for saving Lyria, daughter of our Science Council." Mark blinked in surprise. "Daughter of your Science Council? You didn't mention you were important," he said to Lyria. She smiled. "All life is important. That is what you taught me." Elder Terem continued. "The Vex attack was unexpected. We have been studying Earth from a distance. As Lyria explained to you, we meant no interference with your world. But now that contact has been made," said another elder, "we must decide how to proceed." The third elder approached Mark. "You showed great courage and compassion for someone not of your kind. This is rare in the beings we have encountered." "Not all humans would have done what I did," Mark admitted honestly. "But many would. We're complicated." The elders nodded as if this confirmed something they had already discussed. "We have a proposal," Elder Terem said. "We wish to establish peaceful contact with Earth, but carefully, slowly. Your world is not yet united, and sudden alien contact could cause fear and conflict. We need someone who understands both worlds," Lyria added, her eyes bright with excitement. "Someone who can help us communicate with humans in a way that won't frighten them." Mark began to understand. "You want me to be some kind of ambassador?" "Yes," said Elder Terem. "You would come with us to Lumara, learn our ways, and help us plan a proper first contact with Earth in the future. When you return, you would help prepare your people for meeting us." Mark looked back at Earth through the window. His small cabin, his solitary life, it all seemed so distant now. "Or," Lyria said softly, "you can return home now. We would ensure your safety and keep our existence secret until another time. The choice is yours." Mark thought about his life on Earth. 5 years of isolation since his wife died. No family waiting for him. Just trees and mountains and silence. Then he looked at Lyria, who had shown him wonders he never imagined, who had trusted him when she was most vulnerable, who now offered him a chance to see beyond his small world. "I think," Mark said slowly, a smile forming on his face, "that my wife would be very disappointed if I turned down the chance to visit another planet." Lyria's face lit up with joy. "Besides," Mark continued, "someone needs to make sure you Lumari make a good impression when you finally meet the rest of humanity." Elder Terem nodded with approval. "Then it is decided. Mark Taylor, welcome to the stars." As the ship turned away from Earth and accelerated toward distant Lumara, Mark felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose, of belonging. And as Lyria's hand found his, he knew this was just the beginning of their story.